Hey guys, Nathan here, 24 Chambers of Film. Today we're going to be doing a movie comparison between Big Trouble in Little China and The Golden Child. Now, personally, I was surprised when I found out that these movies often get compared. I actually kind of saw this when I was researching movies that are very similar to each other and released within a certain time frame. There's a term for that. It's called twin films. And I saw Big Trouble in Little China and The Golden Child as twin films, and I was kind of surprised because I myself have never really compared the two because to me they're completely different. I started reading about it more, I guess, when the movies were made, there was competition between the two of them, primarily Big Trouble in Little China trying to beat The Golden Child to the box office because they were expecting them to be so similar. John Carpenter, who directed Big Trouble in Little China, he was offered to be part of or direct The Golden Child, and he turned it down for Big Trouble in Little China. So, why are these two movies considered twin films? Well, the main premise is that they have to deal with supernatural elements, and they both take place or have at least part of their setting. For the Golden Child, it's more than just LA, but in in Big Trouble in Little China, it's pretty much all LA and Chinatown. So Big Trouble in Little China, to me, it's one of the most entertaining movies you can watch. It is got nonstop martial arts action. It is funny, great cast. Kurt Russell's the leading man in that one. It has a Kim Cattrall in there. Those are probably the two biggest names in that movie that you've heard of. But then it also stars Dennis Dunn, James Hong, Victor Wong are the other main characters. Basically the story is about a trucker named Jack Burton, and he has a friend named Wayne, and he takes Wang to go pick up his fiance at the airport, and she gets abducted. When she gets abducted, it is by the henchman of a guy named David Lopan. And Lopan is this sorcerer, and he's runs this underground, basically criminal organization. So when she gets abducted, what's funny in this movie is that you have Kurt Russell and you see him and you think he's going to be the main guy. He essentially is a guy who thinks he's tough and might be tough like in a normal world scenario, but in this scenario, he is not. He's kind of portrayed as like someone a tryhard, I guess. He doesn't know, but he's trying very hard. And Dennis Dunn Wang is a martial arts expert. And so, along with the help of Egg Shen, who's played by Victor Wong, who himself has like these special powers and knows about all these mystical things, they go in to try to save Wang's girlfriend. Now, Kim Cattrall plays Gracie Law, who's a lawyer slash investigator, or tries to be an investigator, and in the end, she gets taken as well because Lo Pan needs to make some sacrifice. He needs girls with green eyes, and Wang's girlfriend had green eyes. Gracie Law. Uh, Actually, I don't even remember if Gracie Law has green eyes. I think she does, but they take her. So the whole thing is they got to get into Lo Pan's fortress, and he has these henchmen, these three henchmen. One who portrays thunder, one who portrays rain, and one who portrays lightning. And they are elemental masters, and there's some great fight scenes with them. There's just some great scenes overall with them. And then there's this monster that kind of runs his facility or haunts his, I don't know what you want to call it. That guy, uh, looks spooky. Again, very supernatural. And there's just a lot of action in this movie, a lot of comedy, and it all works so well. I think it's got a cult following now, but when it came out, it definitely was not appreciated. Now, on the flip side, you have The Golden Child, which stars Eddie Murphy. At that point, Eddie Murphy was like on the rise. He'd done 48 Hours, Trading Places, Beverly Hills Cop, and then he did The Golden Child. And The Golden Child is basically about a Tibetan boy who has these special powers, and he gets abducted by a bad guy. Essentially, I don't know what to call him other than just a bad guy named Sardo Numsa, played by Charles Dance. And when they abduct this boy, then that's in Tibet. This switches over to Los Angeles, where Eddie Murphy, who plays Chandler Jarrell, is trying to investigate the kidnapping of a girl, and he has a meeting with uh, Ki Nang, who is played by Charlotte Lewis, and she basically tells him he's the chosen one to help save this little boy who has these mystical powers. The movie I don't think is funny. I know there's supposed to have comedy elements to it, but to me, just based on what the other Eddie Murphy movies that he released around that time. I just didn't think it was funny. Not to say it wasn't entertaining, but it didn't feel like Eddie Murphy delivering Eddie Murphy in this role. And they then end up going back to Tibet to try to save him. And Victor Wong, who is Egg Shen in Big Trouble in Little China, actually plays the father of Kenang, which is the essentially is the love interest of Eddie Murphy in The Golden Child, and then another character from Big Trouble in Little China, or sorry, not character, but another actor from Big Trouble in Little China who comes out in The Golden Child is James Hong, who is Lo Pan, the main bad guy in Big Trouble in Little China. He plays Dr. Hong in The Golden Child. So it's kind of weird that these two movies came out at the same time in the same year, or released in the same year, and it featured two big actors in both movies. More specifically, Victor Wong, because he I think his role is equivalent in The Golden Child, where James Hong character is a lot bigger role in Big Trouble in Little China. But essentially, they go back over there and then they try to save the boy, and then this whole battle ensues, and they're back in LA at the end of this movie. They've saved the boy. You saw the supernatural power of the bad guy, and it doesn't have the comedy that Big Trouble in Little China has. It doesn't have the action that Big Trouble in Little China has. What it has, because here's the thing: The Golden Child was a financial success. It was very, very, very successful for them. It had a budget of like 20 million bucks, and it made 150 million dollars at the box office. Now, that has to be attributed to Eddie Murphy. I mean, the guy was hot at the time, and basically, you put him on anything, people were going to go watch it at the in the movie theaters. Now, Big Trouble in Little China was a disaster at the box office because it had a budget of like 25 million, and it only made 11 million. So when you compare them side to side in that way, you're going to think, oh, The Golden Child is the better movie, but that is definitely not the case because over time, Big Trouble in Little China has become this cult phenomenon. People love it. There's been comic books, there's action figures, there's just a plethora of other content that has been built around the Big Trouble in Little China movie, where you can't say that for The Golden Child, you know? And even Eddie Murphy himself has said, you can't, like, he's basically talked about how, well, if you're going to talk about a good movie, like, he didn't think Golden Child was a good movie, but it made money at the box office. So who is he to say it wasn't a good movie? But after that, I guess he started getting involved in the creative process of his movies because he didn't feel that The Golden Child was a good movie. So again, are you looking at simply the money or maybe the legacy that it's left? Because Big Trouble in Little China has left huge legacy compared to that. John Carpenter himself has said that he kind of went back to like indie filmmaking because he did not like he stands by Big Trouble in Little China as being a good movie, and he doesn't understand why. He just it to him it was ridiculous that it didn't perform well. And again, time as the time has passed, you realize that movie just I don't know didn't get a fair shake. At the same time when it was released, I believe 3 weeks later, Alien was released. So there was some competition within the vicinity. I don't know what to tell you about that. I mean, just people didn't appreciate it when it came out. And overall, it's like I said, it's a very entertaining movie. Great action scenes, great comedic timing. Jack Burton's character it is hilarious. Kurt Russell knocks it out of the park. They Wang his sidekick, or I don't want to call Wang his sidekick because I think the inside joke was that from everything I've read is that Jack Burton, Kurt Russell's character, thinks he's the leading character. Like he thinks he's the main guy. And realistically, he's a sidekick because in all the situations, he struggles and Wang is the guy who's kicking ass and taking names the entire time, right? Dennis Dunn, who plays Wang. So that was kind of like the inside joke where Kurt Russell thinks he's the main guy, but he's really not. And it's funny because he has like this line where he says, he's talking to this guy and he's like, you know what good old Jack Burton always says? And the guy goes, who? He goes, Jack Burton, me. He goes, good old Jack Burton always says, what the hell? And it's funny because as a kid, I would quote that. And mom was like, what are you saying? Because, I'd say the hell part. Kid, I shouldn't, I guess be saying that. But I loved saying that line. I didn't know what it meant. I just love saying it. And that movie, I saw both of them first when I was young. Big Trouble in Little. Completely forgotten about the Golden Child, but Big Trouble in Little China for me was something a movie that I watch very often. And when I read that, I had to watch The Golden Child again just to get refreshed on it. And I still don't understand why they were compared, other than they were released the same year. And John Carpenter was offered to work on both of them, and he chose The Big Trouble in Little China. Because story wise, the story to me in Big Trouble in Little China is way better than the Golden Child story. The way the movie's made, way better in Big Trouble in Little China. The acting better in Big Trouble in Little China. The action, the fight scenes, better in Big Trouble in Little China. The special effects, because they both have a significant amount of special effects. Big Trouble in Little China blows the Golden Child out of the water. I thought the effects in Golden Child might have been, you know, considered great for their time, but compared to what they did in Big Trouble in Little China, like how they did those fight scenes, how they did, you know, granted in the Golden Child they try to pull off special effects with the guy who was dragon flying and all that kind of stuff, and to me it just didn't look good. Big Trouble in Little China didn't have that type of special effect, but everything they didn't try to go so extreme, but they pulled off a lot of good stuff. There's a guy who blow one of the element guys, he ends up blowing up like a garbage pail kid and blowing up, and that looked phenomenal. I think they try to use more practical effects in Big Trouble in Little China, where in The Golden Child they try to get fancy with like digital special effects, and it just didn't work. I don't know if they try to do them fully digital and it was a combination of uh, practical and then they kind of digitized it in front of a green screen or what, but it just did not look as good as Big Trouble in Little China. Big Trouble in Little China just looked way better. And overall, the story, I think, had a way more depth in Big Trouble in Little China. Start peeling the layers back, right? With the characters, with the lore, the mythical lore that's going on, like the main bad guy, David Lopan. The one thing that in the Golden Child that I kind of just I could care less about, Sardo Noomspa, who was played by Charles Dance. His character just typical bad guy, kind of wants to rule, take over, have power. Whereas Lopan, they gave him some layers of depth. There's the real world Lopan where he's this fragile old man who enters into this demon sorcerer Lopan who's strong and he needs to, make his sacrifice. And the henchmen are just better in Big Trouble in Little China. Like the henchmen in the Golden Child are just bumbling idiots. I'm not saying that they're geniuses in Big Trouble in Little China, but there's more character to them, I feel. And Big Trouble in Little China, there is a character who to me is probably one of my favorite. His name is Eddie Lee. He's played by Donald Lee, and he is Wang's friend. And he is not a martial arts expert like Wang, but he's down because he likes this girl Margot, who is Kim Cattrall's her character. Gracie Lutz, her friend, and he likes her, and then he decides to go in with them at one point, and he's just funny. Like he doesn't do anything when it comes to fighting. Like he's not good, but he's just funny how his scenes play out. And I always thought he was hilarious. And they have this great fight scene at the end with in Big Trouble in Little China that just blows the ending of the Golden Child away. Yeah, I'm trying to think of the way to put this. The Golden Child was okay. Honestly, the Golden Child was average, not even okay. I think The Golden Child was successful because Eddie Murphy. Eddie Murphy is a box office draw, and I think that's why it was successful. But and I'm not saying it was a bad movie; it was okay. I don't think I'd want to hear argument as to why someone thinks The Golden Child is better than Being Trouble in Little China. And I don't want to I don't want to hear. I just think it's better, or I like it better. Why? What is better about it? Because to me, this is a very clear example. If you put them side to side and you start going down the line, one movie is superior than the other, and that's Big Trouble in Little China. Realistically, I wouldn't even compare them because to me, they're not in the same ballpark. There's Big Trouble in Little China, And then there's the Golden Child. Like they shouldn't be compared because one, the only similar facet in these movies is the fact that there is some super mystical power involved. Other than that, they're two completely different movies, plain and simple. So yeah, I was I decided to take a look into this because again, I saw that these are considered twin films. These are definitely these aren't identical twins. I'll tell you that much. These are these are definitely not identical twins. I the term twin should be used very loosely. I understand they were released the same year. They thought they could potentially be in competition with one another. I think maybe that's what hurt Big Trouble in Little China at the box office. The fact that they rushed to get this movie out sooner than The Golden Child. Look, at the end, they lost. They lost in the box office. But in the long run, it's a much more cherished movie. I feel. I think it's gotten now the appreciation it deserves. I know there's been talks about a remake for it, starring Dwayne Johnson, The Rock. Look, I have nothing against Dwayne Johnson. A big WWF fan. Was a big Rock fan growing up. But Big Trouble in Little China is one of those movies that has aged so well. It does not need a remake at all whatsoever. I am not against remakes, especially if they can pull it off. But man, I have serious doubts about this being remade. I feel that the way this movie's made, it works perfectly for the era it was made in. I feel like it looks good for the time that it was made in, and it'll still hold up nowadays. And I get it if you want to make a remake because you love the movie so much, but I feel like there's no need for it whatsoever. I definitely think this one should be left alone. If they do, we'll see. But look, I want to hear from you guys. What do you guys think about it? What do you think is better, Big Trouble in Little China or The Golden Child? Why? And do you think they should have even compared? Because honestly, in my mind, they shouldn't be compared. I don't even think they should be called twin films, other than the fact that they were released in the same year. This is not like the last video where we compared movies and we did America Me versus Blood and Blood Out, where there's a lot more similarities in those movies. They're different, but there's a lot of similarities in those movies. To me, there's two things. One is that it has to do with mystical powers, and the other is that John Carpenter was offered to work on both of them. So I think that maybe you know who knows? I don't know, but maybe John Carpenter was like, hey, they're doing something similar, and that got everyone, oh my god, it's the same thing, right? And that got them into the mind frame of they had to beat it to the box office. But yeah, I think they're different. 100%. I don't think they should be compared, but if you're comparing them head to head, Big Trouble in Little China whoops the Golden Child's butt all day long, in my opinion. So again, let me know what you guys think. I want to hear which one you think is better, and I want to know like what do you think about this rumor remake, which has been rumored for quite some time, and it seems like the talks kind of died down. But what do you think about this potential remake of Big Trouble in Little China? Are you up for it, or are you like me, where you're like, this movie should not be touched because I think it's as good as it can be the way it is. So once again, I'm Nathan with 24 Chambers of Film. Until next time.